Hello, young legion. Here forth, believe. Campus Martius calls you home. Do not disbelieve. Campus Martius is an ancient campus, ancient timeless campus. And it was revealed by humanity before sciences became criminally foreign influenced. They were to the observation of an invisible but still discernible identity of value progression. That is not a name, for example, a place name as the Trinity or as Allah. Allah's name, Al, means the. It's the definite article. In English, there is only one definite article. No. And an is the indefinite article. So you will put an before a word that comes with a vowel, like orange, an orangutan, an ostrich, an apple, an energy source, for example, is only increasing. It is the phenomenon of an only increasingly valuable, also distinctly, but as it's distinctly, not distinctly, and simultaneously as itself, its identity of relationship to itself, which is self-generating. So Genesis, for example, in the Old Testament, is about sequence nature first. It is about an identity of volume that came before physics as the value of sequence true. For example, the more we have lied to us about, so even if it's not our fault, the more we believe opinions about the ancients and about the people that came before us, the Native Americans, colonists A through Z. The nature, the more the way nature tied to our words, to where it's increasingly valuable. That native tie. See, now that became different when the Native Americans were no longer native. The Republic is no longer the world, the possession of the sciences without criminal foreign influences. Now, this is a method that knew that it could trick, hurt, and persuade the phenomenon of human reactions as place names, locations names. See, this is also why how there are motivations for the sciences experts, people with the most knowledge, to use that to get over on correlation nature, to keep the bait itself fake sides of Trinity's correlation nature, which is inherent, active, and progressive, and with the value of two identities of sequence nature / simultaneous nature that won't mix with that, but they are inseparable from it. They will one way, only way. They will, in other words, what's the progressive value when they set up, not just when they set up the plans for modern infrastructure, people stacking in New York City, horizontally and peripherally, while hundreds of nations at once. I'm not forgetting you guys. We're in a species identity of volume / S trap to keep the human identity of volume / S from having positive and negative treatment simultaneously onto 5 identities of sequence nature in observation of the one. That is also simultaneously 3 distinctly while being the 5 distinctly. It is each of those 5, for example, as an identity of sequence / simultaneous nature. Now the slash is an increasing identity of volume, and so is the sequence nature and the simultaneous nature. 3 now, but they are not all simultaneously positive onto its identity of volumes, identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that only increasing distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously as itself, as a trinity with the value, as the value of that invisible but still discernible as value as nature, / nature as value as the sequence truth, the truth about sequence. What really came first? Now people say, oh, well, it's all like this. So we just have to summarize, and that's what I mean. You know what I mean. So they want people to assume things like that, but then they won't let people use mandated law. And demonstrate also recorded evidence originally still how they were pretending mandated law was being followed, but it wasn't. Like, for example, with Jim Crow laws, mandated law was not being followed by the people pretending to follow the mandated law. And the people trying to counter that, individually grouped in together, their defenses of their logic were being and having been employed as well. Off the record employed, I mean employed actually, but not on paper. In other words, even if no one caused it, when they put those crazy laws, slavery, witch trials, what everyone could talk about. I learned at Central Connecticut State University, they worse than just death they had to fear. They even talked about building homes. Better than outside of context that were internation monitored. See, those countries were already defending their identities as syntax nature, therefore as function nature, no, before computers. All identity of the ground locations were database relationships. No one wanted or wants this. So when we take a counter position together as unity, like for example, even like with the acting. Now, I don't know who's going to do that. Forget that. We make the solution of the movie real life, but not that nature of that real. Syntax nature's treatments of reality, they're being and having been employed by that breaching method that kept everyone at the end of the whip, including the person holding the whip. Who wants to think about that? It's not natural. See, they have everything employed off the records first, and that was sustained. Employed reactions, employed premises treatments, employed sequence treatments, so they could take increasingly easy exploitations of themselves having been this method of sophistication, the only one. While everyone A through Z, if they tried to bring correlation and speak about positive and negative truth fully at each age, everyone's nervous system, let alone their sense and sensibilities, use Jane Austen's phrase. I'm using Jane Austen's phrase also because people associated with the Harriet Beecher Stowe house and the Mark Twain house and programs that are on and off campuses with people that train internation and nation together as the identities of the law. They speak about positive and negative. They can't do it without self-valuing increasingly where and how the phrase, quote, the perfect world, unquote, attached to many people is being and having been used in that dialogue where and how they are also recorded, kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, progressive lies, and roles with methods that are bound. Exploitation of that. Perfected exploitation of that. Perfected exploitation of easy remote uses of them needing to hide the finite, active, progressive lies of that. Each identity of the ground location, each memory is programmed by misinformation, fake news, quote, fake news, unquote, to quote President Donald Trump / chief. No. See, now the value of chief is denied because both political parties originally and still were the complete possession, distinctly from the complete possession of the judicial branch, distinctly from, so the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the political branch, the legislative branch, they are the complete possession originally and still of a breaching method that has them screening itself. And because it has already had them remote uses of like, for example, all the answers they're simple and hard. They're just extensive. And everyone agrees that they want how the truth was exploited overcome. So there is already standing unity, but the people pretending to be unity or against it are using premises treatments, are using treatments of science as abridged, as victims, because everyone else did. That's all anyone ever perceived. So, what we have to do is someone has to respond. We have to. We have people at Central Connecticut State University. We have police forms that work for them. Judges and prosecutors retired and standing. Military police families retired and standing. In a whole bunch of other countries, which was manifest in a way and exploited by methods. For example, there's a Debbie Gold, I don't know, she pretended other. And she sequenced doing that. So then, and she was yelling and go crazy. And then she told whatever she said to a teacher, I don't know. In other words, that was left out. But that was also recorded, tied to like O'Brien family. See, that's a former Mayor Gold. Because there are a whole bunch of people, he's associated with the Millwoods Park. A whole bunch of people with that park, I don't know, who are involved with like a Dillon family and military that uses a method with the former Mayor Gold and other mayors, and this is intercities, where they lie about where they get people to go to a location. In other words, or they know where they're going to go. And then they make fake sides. They act. And they time it so they can pretend to be about other issues. And it's all he said, she said, because these are people that were doing this. These are people involved with remote uses of investigations, and investigators are offensively involved with identity thefts and frauds. There's a Joe Aiello who's also with his family and like for years involved with identity thefts and frauds with people and they try to make exceptions with people that also don't know at all. But these are people also with ties along like Elliott Street in Hartford, real or made up bad things that were in the news. People associated with body dumping spots, murders, the locations involved with the such. See, such triggers investigators. Are they being and having been used remotely for the sickest things associated with all that is associated with what was only capable of being originally and still per what was left entrenched, incapable of affording Americans to understand what Marbury versus Madison is really value as. and so need to screen that to pretend other. Self-valuing, how they are backed into evil the same way on television and in life they describe, self-confess and demonstrate overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the people undercover with that, all the programs with that, all the programs with as alternatives to going to jail, the people training in jail, they're all involved with the same identity theft fraud method. It's very simple. And would be overcome. They want to pretend other by pretending they go legitimately back and forth. They've been fabricating audio and video. In case they already had collusion with uses of all identity ground locations. Even Fox Connecticut News and WFSB is in Rocky Hill, and Fox News is in Hartford, Connecticut. Now, north end of Hartford, where most shootings are reportedly. That's in the shadow of Fox Connecticut News at 12 o'clock. And they're trying to start a fight with me for the sequence shift roles. There's a Mogman family. I don't know the Mogman family, but there's a Joe DeMoro, a Mike Kerr, and a Ray Cololo, who are some of the people involved with the Phil Cololo, that Weathersfield police, and the name Cololo they didn't specify. They have the name Cololo involved over the last 2 months with the officer Sullivan and with officers that switch and forge names when they only have one officer with the name. And they have that other people with Sullivans on Park Street through time, involved further with the principal sex offenders campus with them. And has involvements with doctors and medical racketeering, foreign and domestic, and various natures of drugs and medicines crimes. With the anti-identity thefts and frauds, same ones. This is where their motivations are. There's an officer Poisian involved with social media where they have readings of statutes where they, like for example, those readings of statutes where they can't be sued. They're leaving out exceptions where the individuals can be sued, and they're in the furtherance of, but our hierarchies that are criminally foreign influence through administrations, they're positive and negative treatments. They're forcing leaders to be collusion with them and hurt that way. No, as long as they blame on other things other than themselves, what they were used remotely for. This is through time. So they're intercity. There are people in New Britain, Connecticut, that are involved with Weathersfield, Connecticut, interbranch, and inter-campuses and intra-campuses, identity thefts and frauds. They replace audio and video that is actually recorded, and sequence shift. These are also ones involved further with further sequence shifts and roles with such, and people on the child sex offender registry also involved personally with people associated with who answer the phones. Like a DeMoro family is associated with a Smith family. A number of families with the name Smith with the judges, and people involved with the confessions of the police forms for fabricating audio and video with the courts. These are also people with the prisons tied to them, like Sandy Hook. They're involved with a whole bunch of people, like an O'Brien family, and associated with Rick C.M. Faglione instead of Brian Silver, and Brendan Leahy, and his father also has that name, Brendan Leahy. He confessed years ago. The reason they made that confession, because the whole time he was in high school, I had nothing to do with him. I never saw him around, even in the hallway on middle school when he was in a middle school class with me, with a Mr. Neville, who I never had a personal conversation with Mr. Neville. They made me go to a summer school class. They put Heather Hansen, Joe DeMoro, in the summer school class with me, and Ray Clough, my neighbor. the one who moved into a house that was a police chief years ago. Now my town's police chief, his daughter, and her brother and people associated with them, like a John Mayano, per him, they're also involved with sequence shifts. Pretended I knew them when my neighbor was in my grade. Now these are also people like all along Route 3 who make instances. You know where people say crazy things in life sometimes to people? So if you're a person that doesn't try to speak about positive and negative where it counts, they're not going to matter. It doesn't matter if it's politics. They pretend it's politics because it's fake sides. That was his evidence prevented free speech. Where free speech is prevented, others sickly there. That values other nations' conflicts because it's fake. We have to make another name, another phrase besides BS, bullshit. But that's all it is. That science never spoke for Hartford, Connecticut, for one city in America. The science never spoke for Wethersfield, Connecticut, let alone Hartford, Connecticut. And Wethersfield, Connecticut is where George Washington had to come to meet with the French general to secure his help in that part of winning the Revolutionary War. Thank God, it would have been worse. North and South, East and West. See, the directions share an identity of volume. They share an identity of value progression. And its identity of relationship to itself that had made us humanity, we weren't invented. Increasingly, that native republic, increasingly its concentrated campus's value is present here, positive or negative. It's present there as its positive or negative relationship to itself, but it's tied to our sex. See, all exceptions and exception in nature was his being and having been employed, not just physically, by a breaching method onto all locations, areas, and states of humanity. This archetypal breaching method knew that it could trick, hurt, persuade, and take as all the stewardships of the names, of the phenomenon of the names of countries. See, the ancients went by a science. They went by the science of why and how we're individual, grouped together, areas, ages. Everything demonstrated to them that it was invisible but discernible. There are distinct and distinctly bound identities of invisible but discernible. This is what correlation means to reveal. And this also uses evidence. They're preventing us free speech and pretending other. And they're saying sue, but they're forging names and switching names. Because when I was a kid, the people involved with the campuses and with the parks and with the locations, and they come to your house. And then they pretend they knew you before that. It's a whole bunch of things they do, but if you, in other words, and I had to think about it, it's such the imposition of time can't work. This is worse than extortion because they replace. There's an officer Poison also. He replaces what is actually recorded with fake things. And as people in collusion with the courts that have been forging names, switching names, fabricating audio and video transcripts to replace what is actually recorded into databases. And locations like campuses where they have things recorded 24/7 for a reason, they've been overcoming that by just putting fake things recorded in there. Same people who are using Facebook for roles with pretending to be against behavior because of things written online and stuff like that, who are roles lying about that, where and how those are the only evidences. You can't record the people. But you can record, in other words, they record themselves lying. They're preventing anything from being on writing, and they're setting up fake exceptions into databases. Now, so they've been doing this with identity ground locations. They've been pretending that, that's why the perfect world exploited. That's why where and how the science is abridged, but pretending they could speak for science. It's all right if people want to speak for, but don't keep making opinions and calling names to people you don't even know. So we need to get online, because the people around everyone are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Too scared and too not knowing, understanding it. Because it's involved, for example, with too many things at once. Not going to want to understand it. Like it's a whole bunch of ways. Washington, D.C. and World Trade Center. Involved with people like a domain family. I don't know the domain family. They're involved with sequence shifts. Pretending, people that pretend when they make instances where they're within your presence, so they could say, "Oh, you forgot that." There was no those were set up so they could say that, because these are people that have been trying to discredit me, because they were involved with various natures juxtaposed of distinct organized crime, in collusion with their identity thefts and frauds rules against me, for the people tied to him. Now, these are people that are required. I never saw him around Justin Levinskis. I never saw Justin Levinskis around. I barely know Justin Levinskis. He's one of the people that sought me out for confessions, his roles with military police. Now, and with the people that, I don't know where they went to school. In other words, there's Debbie Gold put me in with, they spread lies. They do things with one kids are in this class, these are in this class. They use people's names and they put them in different locations. Now they're doing this because they were already involved with evidence. They need to hide lie progressions. They need to hide how they were involved with investigators, where they're making confessions. Where they were doing it for legitimate reasons or not, it's differentially. Because then they're using the identity ground locations, the overt criminal enterprises, and the people associated with the witness protection program. And the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso also associated with that. They also have the phenomenon of roles with predicate acts with the same house/S involved on my street with the force roles. Because the Colo family is not the officer who called me from Weathersfield town offices about 2 months ago. And that was confirmed by the police when I called up. Then they were told to lie. They replaced what is actually recorded audio and video. Now, Chris Walters told me that a Spada family is involved with him, with investigators associated with people that are also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, involved with former director of the FBI and federal criminals before they got caught. And their family members were involved with inter-campuses and intra-campuses and with the locations on next to them manifest with where and how they've been roles with uses of juxtaposed natures of organized crime originally and still. It's not complicated. And science never spoke for Hartford. So Fox Connecticut News, you could continue to be a cancer to the north end of Hartford, recorded most overtly, easy to discern, forsaken by the fake sciences and by their roles with the leveraging of and with the culturing of exceptions and exception natures that are a front per their offensive, positive, and negative treatments. as is also recorded in relation. The only way you can discern that is where and how they're making opinions anyway. When people are asking to have mandated law, address it that way. Let the people say that that's good enough. That engineering's not breaching method applied. Let them say that. But get them from the names forging and switching. For example, overall. And I didn't get that from Obama. I was saying that from before that. In other words, I think people from Central Connecticut State, there are proofs that people from Central Connecticut State University, I mean, they use these parties, their roles with what keeps them hurt. It keeps countries hurting each other. See, in other words, to keep our identity of volume /S as individual group and species identity of volume /S from being its science. We know, and there are proofs that we should have a day or a website. Who wants to create a website? I'll give half of my part if someone. I don't know I can't say that because I don't know about I don't want to get kicked off YouTube because I think that's against the rules to do something like that. But we could do it. Donate. Who will do it? Donate a website where it's designed to only yell at groups or the species, not at one individual. And we have to know. See, this is why people say, "Oh, an autocrat is bad," and they make positive and negative A or B, not in relationship to nature, not in relationship to anything. In other words, and that makes fights and disputes about what's the defenses of that itself, that method of logic, the quality of it, can't defend that in the premises treatments it's using, the sequence treatments with its convictions and opinions, and afford. They're actually inherent active and progressive means of voices of each age of fact treatment nature that are simple short words of and means where subjects are at once invisible but still discernible. So we need to be able to bring up subjects multiple because of how when we have problems between people with locations, they've been covering up sequence shifts and roles with intercampuses and intra-campuses, identity thefts and frauds, and methods of pretending other and getting away with it even though others recorded, by them replacing what is actually audio and video recorded. So there are more people with Facebook pages of New Britain Superior Court also involved, and with prisons also involved with Officer Poison, and people associated with Officer Poison recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with falsified police reports, forging names and switching names of officers too, even from different departments. So then if someone goes back and looks at that, they can't check. These are also people involved with like pension thieves, bookmakers, shylock's and stuff like that, people associated with people who did go to my grammar school, my middle school. The middle school, there's a Dr. Graham, and there are various courts, judges, and families, and doctors associated with them and their families, involves them with drugs and medicines crimes. Has something to do with Afghanistan. They also put sequence shifts and involved that with their roles with houses on Zion Street and that are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated in like a fire department with people associated with an Iowa family. Also with Miami. And I don't know if that was, it might have been real, it was real or made up. Someone, there's a, I don't know their names. There's relatives of a Claudia Scalora and of a Subby Scalora that are involved with predicate acts, with, drugs and medicines crimes with the police and judges, and untimely deaths, and identity thefts and frauds. And these are people that, involved with the DeMoro family. And they attach Saudis and people from other countries. And the DeMoro family said that I don't know them. See, every once in a while they used to make confessions. I found out tied to a Mr. Abruzzi in my grammar school. One day I met him for 1 second. He told me to do a maze he put. Then I did it backwards and I got it right away. In 1 second I did the maze. And then he was all upset and that was it. They're involved with, and then someone at Central Connecticut, and so a bunch of people at Central Connecticut State University were already being and having been involved with investigations and with investigators and with cases with that nature of logic of overt criminal enterprises and where and how those overt criminal enterprises and people associated with the body dumping of spotted Billy Grasso all along Route 3 in that street there. There's a Faenza family, and there's an Oliveri family, all along Route 3, involved with identity thefts and frauds. And Route 3 goes by the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices, and the locations right next to it. There's Enzo Faenza and others recorded, confessed, and demonstrated a Dillon family is associated with them, with judges and prosecutors and people with this Kalal family, involved further with the principal sex offenders campus and identity thefts and frauds through time. They've been attaching kids to fake locations, lying, acting to their parents behind their backs, attaching their parents and everyone, and so everyone's just polite with, they're lying about behavior. They have that politeness employed criminal insidiousness. That's why I know how it's important, north end of Hartford, to understand and not let it happen. There's a Chris White. There's involved with drugs and medicines crimes as an undercover officer, reportedly, as one of the ones with a bunch of boyfriends of his girlfriend at the same time, involved with identity thefts and frauds with him. And with military, we're involved with the name Socia, people involved with the intelligence community. They had everyone speaking through other people. And the Olsen family, I don't know the Olsen family. I never had anything to do with these people. These people are involved with, Mendez police brothers. Attached me to fake audio and video with this Officer Poison, Intercities. These are people on off Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, Connecticut, on off Weathersfield Police Department roles with wire crimes, falsified police reports, identity thefts, frauds, extortion, mail crimes, wire crimes, drugs crimes, medicines crimes, also with houses next to the schools and with the fire department. There's also a Yagman family recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with them with uses of Facebook pages of New Britain Superior Court and of the campuses and of their roles with those police forms, intercedes with the drugs and with the ways that they were mixed with the news media and through time, where they already used them for too much. They have to hide. So they have remote uses of them. They're pretending other people make conspiracy theories. They even have fake conversations with doctors because they have their kids involved with identity. In other words, they're doctors in a Leahy family. They attach me to fake conversations. Their roles with these methods, with the databases, where they create instances between the kids. The same way they had to create instances just to get parts of a hardware to work on when they're building the engineering of a computer, not before it even works. They have to create instances so they can get something going. Then this is going to be looking for the keys. This is going to be looking for that. This is going to be doing this. So it can sense everything. It can do more than us, but we can do way more than it until at the same time. And only we can do what only trying to be, what is actually positive. Sequence before the order of the finite. Sequence as the order of the finite. Sequence as the active, progressive, and identities complete, where it is semi-nature. So in other words, where we are an individual is not enough to be the integrity to make more a forever nature of this integrity. So we have to be grouped and species, and that still has to be positive, but per its method, per its system. So we already all are this longing, but we have it employed to theater or hurt by that theater, self-valuing increasingly, all private tied to the interbranch and the overt criminal enterprises, and the private ones recorded effectively kept needing to hide the same instances, roles, uses of instances, where they film exceptions. Mike Curry years ago. So in other words, in a Joe DeMoro and a Ray Clow, they recorded, confess, demonstrate, they act in to girls where they know the person's not going to be able to have a response, and they're never going to see that girl again, because these are people who stack the classes where they're in the furtherance of all that is recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with my town's police chief from 1 year ago, with officers calling me on the phone, forging names, switching names. They're lying to Judge Andrew Napolitano, Weathersfield Police Chief, Officer Cintron. So you should be standing down now. And I want to know, too, for this officer, Poison, who replaced the audio and video with you, because you guys did this also on Trinity College and also on CCSU. And there are judges and prosecutors and deans also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with you guys also in his defendant capacities, former director of the FBI. Leading up to that and since, you guys are in collusion. So so I have to bring up instances and people like with the Weathersfield Police Department, but that is simultaneously inseparable from the motivations and the methods and the predicate acts stuck into databases already by the other campus, by the other branches, and the forging names and switching names, so they can pretend that I should just be able to sue when they're preventing their individuals criminally involved, while they're still furthering what already used remotely, what is actually why and how they are manifest with Central Connecticut State University. I don't know Mike Roberts. Mike Roberts is also another one they recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with identity thefts and frauds, who went out of his way to pretend other instances. In other words, because he was a victim of the people interstates with all these different cases and depositions with different things where they're using such with the overt criminal enterprises too, acting illusions with locations. The sequence shifts are one of the things they have in common. These are also people involved with post-dated documents, post-dated from inside the Ninth Circuit Court, which is right next to the World Trade Center towers, right before they were hit. That was proven afterwards. But right before they were hit, they showed the court post-dated documents to make them look as if they had been filed late. So that was proven. Then all the way 2006, it wasn't until 2006 that proven led to a 2006 district court case now in Connecticut. That was in Manhattan, right next to the World Trade Center towers. That Ninth Circuit Court, where they were post-dating, sequence shifting. These are people that do that sequence shifting where they act where the courts and the people with a whole bunch of other countries are kept needing to hide the same sequence of finite, active, progressive lies, identity thefts, frauds roles, and methods roles. They're preventing mandated law to counter methods leveraged against Wethersfield, Connecticut. These are the same ones involved from Wethersfield interbranch with impositions against the north end of Hartford and the other parts of Hartford, sickly distinctly, to keep how sickly non-distinctly from being discerned, and even by them, because I used them remotely since they were kids by a method doing this. Then they pretend, oh, it's personal. It's not personal. I don't know Debbie Gold. She's trying to pretend she has personal problems with me, and she's trying to further illusions with this Iowa family and with the other people further involved with this campus that keeps the campuses are all recorded, confessed, and demonstrated through administrations involved with Washington, D.C. ties. Also to the locations like where George Washington had to come to meet with the French general. Houses on Church Street are also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the people with the Wethersfield town offices. And people from Trinity College confessed that investigators were influencing them to pretend that my neighbor that I was his friend. I told them, they're in the context where they were confessing, demonstrated, recorded. Actually, when I was in a cafeteria, where a girl would time things, like and make it look like there's no way to respond, and I tried to respond and she walked away when she asked me if my father was in the mafia when I was a kid. Now see, this girl's involved with predicate acts with people associated with the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso, and with the houses next to the state judicial branch offices, and with people with black and white female judges and male judges. I don't know about, there were only the female ones were black and white, involved with the principal sex offender, where they use the courts, where they're preventing people from responding to rape threats made by the courts in relationship to the principal sex offender's campus, where and how such recorded shows how they sustained abuses of kids, and where and how they are pretending other. By pretending to know me behind my back, they had a Wethersfield meeting about me. People involved with WFSB and Fox Connecticut News recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with their investigators with medicines crimes and drugs crimes with kids, and with physical delusions, and with identity thefts and frauds, methods, roles, natures, needs, and styles, preventing counters to them, attaching us to fake words, fake pleading in cases. These are also people associated with the former director of the FBI who have been pretending they didn't know things were proven in cases that were proven in cases. Is also recorded through depositions associated with the former director of the FBI and with his co-defendants leading up to the World Trade Center attack. In it, that's also relevant to the military, police, and foreign military, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated in collusion with locations, intercities, and on and off the campuses, leading up to the World Trade Center attack and since, where they had investigators, and uses of people's names behind their backs, and where they have programs with the training of the police forms, the training of that. That's all complete possession. That defended is for their fact treatments defended. They need to hide, they need to make it look like it's just because they want complete possession of all identity ground locations for themselves. But it's complete possession by that method that put the houses the way they are. That's a front. That's a breaching screen. They're blocking a breaching screen. They're blocking mandated law. they're taking positions. The corrupt hierarchy of the FBI is recorded with other agencies also involved with Church Street, with identity thefts and frauds, fake conversations between people, sequence shifts roles, all kind of ways. Same ones leading up to it in that context of the World Trade Center. Now there are a whole bunch of people associated with the Scalera family that Wethersfield police also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, involved with them on and off the campuses in private schools. Their roles with attaching kids to fake locations, fake with them, fake ties to them. Now they all have ties to the house in my area. Involved also houses tied to them, with the like in the area with the they're trying to make it look like nothing personal. They bring these things up. I don't know why they brought it up. They have roles with the people who answer the phones for the Wethersfield police, and so they have roles with everything they do bad, but they're allowed to do it. But they use it because they have roles with the campuses, with a whole bunch of nature's organized crime, and further with the people on the child sex offender registry that were involved with other natures with the courts and police forms leading up to the World Trade Center attack. They were with locations faking things. They were so in other words, they've been stacking fake things in databases. They've been roles with it, and differentially, and with a whole bunch of people that are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with their families, a whole bunch of ways, with the overt criminal enterprises and private ones also timed. They use these methods, like, in other words, dear Mogman family, please respond for the courts forging and switching names. And they have female judges associated with uses of this Kerr family. Also, Officer Jerry Miller on Facebook, I don't know his name, but he also brought up his roles with a Kerr family that also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated they were involved. There's people that make confessions to people and that they're going to lie to girls and stuff like that. In other words, in relationship to their roles with courts, police forms, military, religious, crazy people, crazy parts of religion, and they're keeping that all in collusion. Criminally foreign influence, delusions raw, identity thefts and frauds roles, and wire crime roles and methods, sequence shift methods, identity thefts and frauds methods. So this is also how one of the ways it's recorded that WFSB and WTNH and there's also there are two twin brothers named Corone. I also don't know them. They were influenced to create instances where everyone made confessions at once about their roles with a Perone family and sharing the daughter and the brother in, all kinds of confessions I don't even want to bring up because that's their method. But it has something to do with, they brought up locations. They brought up a St. Anthony's Church that is also involved with identity thefts and frauds with them on private schools, with the public schools, and with where and how they create instances, where and how they also mix it in where people aren't going to see the people all day or ever because they're in this other class. So they sneak in like an instance where they pretend they exploit that through time, where they have a whole bunch of fake people pretending they're not fake as the law, which is, don't call that racism. Because there are things that is worse than that are more is true always. And it needs to be called racism with things like that. Because real science is not speaking, that's evidence. Correlation in nature has means to evidence that show complete possession of the identities of each of the branches of government individually grouped and together. So please follow my lead. Fake branches, CT, must now proceed. So this is also how they have linguistics and specialties of medicine with this. You can't counter that without countering the courts involved with them criminally first, with the locations. Because they'll lie about, too, why we have to counter the courts and the police simultaneously with where we have to counter the people involved with the child abuses, like the Kerr family and like the DeMauro family. The DeMauro family also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed by a Mendez family that stole my identity through time. I never had a class with them. That's why they made an exception with that 8th grade summer school class they may be going. That was for roles with people all along Route 3 with identity theft frauds, fabricating audio and video. I never had a personal conversation with that guy. He stole my poem too. Better poem than he could write, Mr. Neville. Nothing personal. You got men and women in his family associated with the intelligence community and warehouse military, Coast Guard, the campuses, the police forums, the courts. They share databases, relationships. They share roles with this method where the mayors and their family members' sense and sensibilities are recorded being and having been used remotely, just like the news media. That after this, in other words, they've been doing this for a long time. They keep putting more and more fake things, and or they keep having more and more collusion with people using the fake news articles they are writing. And so they're not trying to legitimately duck behind with all the demonstrated roles with FBI and CIA, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, involved with state police and their family members, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed, already having been used to make instances where they could say they communicate with me. Where that is involved with them pretending fake instances and attaching fake audio and video online to replace what is actually recorded online and other. So they offensively need more and more to pretend to be against behavior that's A or B. They're preventing demonstration of that by preventing free speech. And they're switching names and forging names to pretend that we have the means to sue when they know they're in collusion with that breaching method preventing it and as that breaching method. But it's worse than that because it exploits it from there. So I don't know the Spada family sought me out to record, confess, and demonstrate, confirm. A Delaferro family recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed. They have a judge in their family. He's involved with them with identity theft frauds, medicines crimes, and drugs crimes with kids, and with elderly homes, and with identity thefts and frauds with their falsifying police reports roles, with other natures of courts and with their own natures of courts, and with other police forms. So my town's police chief, former director of the FBI in his defendant capacity, they have remote uses of attorney generals through administrations also recorded. How that is leveraged and maintained, it's also recorded. So it's not complicated at all, it's just extensive. Everyone already agrees as the soul. We know what we agree about. See, where we don't agree about where things are economic, that was set up by a breaching method. So even that is, if you're legitimate soul, you science, that's increasingly valuable because you could prove, you could say, look, we really want the best for everyone. We really want the species science of volume /S method its own native pure to be. That's why chief is